Doing these podcasts is going to be a lot of fun because I'm so all over the place. This is going to help me get a little bit more organized. But so I just did another podcast and I talked about adversity. It's the last one that I did. And when I was listening to it, because I'm not even editing it, I just throw them out there because it's what's on my mind. And I really do think it'll help somebody if I'm being genuine, authentic, sincere, and transparent because I waited 10 years for us to do something like this and was always worried about being perfect. And the fact is that it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be ideal. I just need to get it out there because I do want to help that one person that's just either hanging on, trying to push through an obstacle or a hurdle, or just might need some advice to know that, hey, man, somebody else has gone through what you're going through right now. And it doesn't have to be that bad. And you're not alone. And that's the funny part about it. You're really not alone. There's a lot of ballers out there that have problems. There's a lot of people that I would say, like me, that have had some success in their life, had some fun, had some issues that they had to deal with or didn't deal with. And we're all kind of, connected in that way. And this really is just to help you out in the meantime until you get back on your feet again. But the reason why I decided to quickly do another one is because I was talking about Steve Jobs. And I saw a documentary on Steve Jobs. And ironically, it was right around the time I saw one from the Eagles, Joe Walsh. He was doing it was a documentary about them as well. And they both came up with the same thing. And in my last podcast, when I referenced adversity, what I wanted to refer to was Steve Jobs and how things that he did in his life. And if you read the book or saw the documentary, you'll know what I'm talking about. If not, go check it out. It's astonishing. Um, he ended up doing things really unorthodox, and there was really no structure. It seemed to do those things that he was doing. Like, for example, he was big into calligraphy, which I never knew before, but it's interesting. Back in the day when the supercomputers were being developed and the personal computers were being developed, there was only one type of font. Well, because of him being interested in calligraphy, Steve Jobs actually, that's one of the reasons why we have so many different opportunities to use different font on computers. It's because of something that he was passionate about. And all the things and choices and decisions that he made, none of it maybe really made any sense. I don't even think to him at the time. He just liked to do what he liked to do. Same thing with Joe Walsh. He was saying the same thing, like with the decisions he made and the processes that he did. And both of them can kind of agree on this one. And you'd have to check the date on both documentaries because I'm, this is all from the hip right now. Is that both of them said when they look back on their life, Steve Jobs, I think, said it, is that all of the dots seemed to just kind of connect, and then it all made sense when he looked back. And Joe Walsh kind of said the same thing. So I just thought it was interesting. Two successful people in their own right had referenced that. None of it was kind of making any sense, kind of chaos, if you will, kind of like probably what you're going through, what I went through. Because I'll tell you, the unbelievable, with my arena where I was at, I ended up getting involved in sales training. And I did sales training because from a salesperson's point of view, I was a salesperson for 13 years. I got passed over 6 times. I was resentful. I was upset. I was even laughed at for getting passed over. But if you know my story, I was laughed at when I first got into business, 12 years prior to this point. What happened is I was told I was too stupid to sell anything. And that really affected me. And I was really like, game on, it's time to go. So now, after all this adversity that I deal with and hitting goals and doing all that stuff and dealing with my behavioral issues, addiction and all that stuff, or not dealing with it, and still being successful, I ended up in my own right. I'm not. There's guys that sold way more than I did on the planet Earth, but I read a couple books and I got into sales, and next thing you know, one thing leads to the next, and I'm a professional car salesman. Well, I wanted to get into management. I thought it would be a prideful thing for my family. So I thought to myself, what would I need to do really was, if I want to be taken seriously, I need to get into management. And what's the best way to do that? I need to basically sell more in less time. But I was kind of a rogue salesperson. I tried to follow the rules. I tried to get management involvement, but it just didn't really work out too well. I don't know the best. I just didn't fit in. I don't know how to put it any other way. But so when I finally did not get passed over and I became a sales trainer or manager, I became a sales manager, I thought the only thing I need to do at this point is I need to make more, because get a position and make less would be stupid. So I just decided to get into sales training because I've read every book on the subject. I applied the principles. I did pretty good for myself, I thought, and I did okay. So I thought I'll just train a few of the underperformers, and I'll move the needle. And it worked. And when I finally got an audience, I was terrible, terrible, terrible. Some people even say I'm still terrible, but that's okay. I got involved in creating the sales process that really was shortening the amount of time it took to buy something and giving a lot more information. And I've learned it from everybody. So I didn't reinvent the wheel. I just learned it from all the sales trainers that were out there. I internalized it my own way and put my own process together. And hey, that's the way it works. And just so for the record, there's nothing new that's being said out there when it comes to selling. There's just different ideas and maybe a different process. Customers really don't change. They have high expectations. They want the information. And so do your people you work with. That's a leadership thing. We'll talk about that later. I'm jumping all over the place again. So my point being is that as the dots were, going into sales and getting passed over, getting into sales management, wanting to train my people so I can get a pay raise, it started to work. And then I ended up going through a really bad relationship issue, had this sales trainer come in, and the sales trainer got like 200 people in a room and was basically trying to rally for a big sales seminar. He asked me to introduce him. And he asked me to introduce him probably 2 minutes right before he went on. So I didn't know what I was doing. It didn't make any sense. I was not a public speaker. I was afraid to get in front of that many people. But I went out there and I basically said where I was at before the training, this guy's training, where I was at before and where I wound up after. And then I started going over some of the principles and started doing it like an I say, you say, kind of like a rant. And I had a lot of fun with it, but nobody knows how pissed off I was before I got on stage because I'm finding out that my marriage is falling apart. And basically the person who I decided to marry is now no longer interested in that relationship. And this is like maybe an hour and a half before I'm up on stage there. And I was just in a really bad place. So with all the intensity, it was like a stick of dynamite blowing up in that room. And when it was all said and done, I went back to my business and the guy calls me up and he goes, "You're not going to believe this." I'm like, "What's that?" He goes, "I've been doing this a long time, and based on your presentation, I have never had 100% of the room sign up for sales training." And he actually said right to me, and he goes, "We need to find a way to get you out of that element and find an exit strategy for you to get in the training world." And that's how it started. It was really had to deal with a need, a lot of anger, and then all of a sudden an opportunity to explode. And that's what happened. And I took my expertise and I put it in the line and I talked for about 10 minutes to introduce this guy. And for that time, then I knew I wanted to get into the speaking area. But then now I'm getting trained to go do this. And the moral of the story is as I get trained to do this, I leave my job, the security blanket I've been doing for a long time. Now I'm going to be a national sales trainer and a national speaker. And now I got to go to school for it. And I didn't do too well in school. I like to read. And I was pretty passionate, but now there's structure, there's organization, there's science behind it. And I needed to learn all those things. I basically needed to learn how to become a public speaker. So in doing so, and going through the school, after 2 weeks of it and, cameras and the intensity and the interviews, and I got another podcast I can do about how all that happened, which I can't wait to do that one. That's a kick-ass story. How this all happened and how we all met and what happened. It's just dynamite story. It's a great Hollywood story, I think. Just kidding. But it really is a cool story. It's a major story in my life, but I'll talk about that at a later time. But so now all of a sudden, here I am. I'm opening up for the national trainer and the national trainer doesn't show up. Never spoke to an audience to do an actual training. I introduced, and that's what I was supposed to do and take care of the audience. I think there was about 180 people in the room. First off, the speaker doesn't show up. My handler, the office manager of the company, tells me that I need to go on and be the trainer because he's not going to get in. His flight arrangements and everything got messed up. So I learned a lot about myself when it came to that. But I remember this was my first day on the job as an assistant trainer. And I got sick. I was in the kitchen waiting to go out into the hotel, the doors between where the actual audience is. And they're waiting and waiting and waiting. And then all of a sudden I go out and, man, I just blew it up. My microphone didn't work. 180 people in the room. Microphone just wasn't working. I'm like, this can't be happening. I did the same thing I did when I got the job in the first place, or when he noticed me or whatever, however you want to call it. And I just did what I do. I just was through all the training that I had out the window and was just passionate, was authentic. And it was what a great time it was. And for those 40 minutes that I spoke, and that was it, I was profusely sweating. I had no idea the air conditioning went out and my audience was becoming uncomfortable. It was my job to take care of that part of it. about 35 minutes into it, the speaker actually shows up. The trainer actually shows up. He comes up, John comes up on and takes over and just nails it out of the park. But then the reviews came in afterwards, and they said that the 40 minutes that I had with him was more intense, more passionate, and they really enjoyed me. And that's when, shortly after that, I actually did, in fact, become a national sales trainer. None of it made any sense. And the adversity that I was dealing with at the time, I was forced into it. But I was forced into it because of the opportunities and things that I was given prior to that moment. I took advantage of. Going through the public speaking course and all that at this place in Georgia was super intense. And the owner of that organization, I really didn't get along with too well. He was a mentor, and you don't have to like your mentor or whatever, but he possessed certain skill sets that I was looking for, and I chose him as my mentor. He chose me as an employee. And for the short time we were together, it worked out great. And then I can explain in another podcast what happened in that whole story about the speaking world. But it was a very exciting time in my life. And then without dealing with certain things, behaviors and stuff in my life, it all fell from grace. And now I have to deal with more adversity. Being on the center stage and feeling like a rock star for a few months living in Vegas, to having to go to a hospital and then all of a sudden figure out what I'm doing with my life, to living at my mom's house again, divorced, broke, and, mentally screwed up. I don't know if I would call it a breakdown or a breakthrough. I don't know. But so the point of this is that I wanted to recap in the last podcast that actually, when you talk about these successful people, those successful people, whether it's Steve Jobs or whether it's the guy from the Eagles, Joe Walsh, and they talk about their careers and stuff, it doesn't have to make sense today. You just have to take a step forward. And then when you turn around for a second, like Sam Crowley says, you're not going back there. So don't worry about it. But take a look back and it all kind of makes sense. All of the challenges and adversities that I did deal with have made me a better person. They've made me a better person. And I am so passionate about my no comfort zone model that I know, I'm so confident that it can help you get through your breakthroughs, get through your problems. I am so confident it can help you become the version of yourself that you've always wanted to be, because it talks about it. And I'll give it to you right now in the last few seconds of this podcast. Here it is. Become aware, identify of how you got there and what you want, make decisions that are consistent with the first two, and then take all the necessary actions you need to get there. And the actions aren't what you think. It's the small actions that matter. That's getting out of your comfort zone. And all these people talk about, life is so magical and get out of your comfort zone and these great memes that are out there. And I keep saying it time and time again, but nobody's helping you get out of your comfort zone. It's time to wake up, do a reality check, find out exactly where you're at, take a step in the right direction, and then watch what's going to happen. Take one step forward, take another step forward, take another step forward. That might be showing up at the alarm clock. It might be going for a run in the morning. It might be dropping a donut. Whatever it is for you, that next right step happens. You build a few of these up. Here you go. You ready for it? You get some confidence. When you have confidence and you have a little bit of momentum and you believe in yourself, you start getting conviction. And when you have conviction, your reality will change. It could happen overnight. It could happen over months. For me, it happened over a 60-day time period when I said, I'm not going to play these rules anymore. I'm going to live in the no comfort zone, and I'm going to prove to everybody that this can work. It's magical what will happen when you get outside your comfort zone, and I can show you how to do it. Hit me up at thenocomfortzone.com. Give me an email. We can communicate that way. Schedule a call. Maybe I can help you. If you like this podcast, help me out. I'm trying to get started. I'm trying to get this out there. Like it on iTunes. Give me a positive review, hopefully. If you've got a negative comment, I can deal with that too, but I'd rather not. And in the end, remember, I care about you, and that's why I'm doing this. And more importantly, I believe in you because I believe in me. I've been there and I've done that, and I can help you get out of the rut that you're in. Take care, live a life of passion, and remember, get out of your comfort zone and live on purpose.